Good afternoon, my name is Randy Person and I have a light show XeniaLights. This is my 2015 light show walkthrough. This year the major change to my show was the addition of a lot of RGB pixels. I have two Tune 2 signs. They come from Shindigs. These are the fourth year that I've had these up. They've held up very well and I'm quite happy with those. Next to that I have one of my newest elements this year are my nested arches. These take a standard light arch that we've all done for years. The standard light arch is 10 foot in length. It's got 8 100 light segments on it, 8 channels. The HDPE arch underneath it is the Matt Johnson design. Uses a crossbar at the bottom. Uses 10-inch HDPE tubing. If you will look, I expanded it, and with the 9-foot HDPE arch and the 10-foot light arch, they nestle on top of each other quite nicely. At the end of the support bar on the bottom, I just put a T. That T is open at the bottom. I have a piece of 18-inch rebar that's about 10 inches in the ground and about 8 or 9 inches up into the arch on each side, and that holds the arches nicely. I have a total of 8 arches across the front of the yard. They make a very nice display. The regular light arches are controlled by SS8 controllers, and those are just in orbit boxes. The HDPE arches are controlled by an E6804 from Sand Devices. I have those in an orbit box and a 350 watts power supply. I use one E6804 to control 4 of the arches. On the end of my yard, each side, I have 8 6-foot Christmas trees. These are just Walmart Christmas trees that I bought maybe 3 years ago. I think their retail on them is about $30. I think I paid $8 each. The thing that I did with each of these trees was I cut the base off so that they would sit down on the ground so they look more like shrubs, again trying to have a more natural look. And each of these trees are wrapped with 4 sets of lights, standard lights, LED lights. And so you have red, green, blue, and white. And these are just run by standard Renard SS16 in an orbit box. I made these up. My first year that I was doing it, and one of the things I did with these, which was kind of fun, is that I actually mounted electrical outlets through the bottom of the box. So they're actually just plugged in through the bottom of the box. It works quite well. Another new element this year are my pixel mini trees. These trees are about 5 foot tall. They are 12 strands of 25 pixels each. They are spaced 2 inches apart, and they are run by one E682 that runs all 4 of the trees, and those turned out quite well. I used the Boscoyo strips and also the Boscoyo Topper, and then it's just 3/4 inch EMT, and those worked quite well. I'm very happy with the way those turned out and the way they look. They're 180 degree. My mega tree, which is awesome. This tree is 32 strands, 180 degree tree. Each strand has 70 nodes. I'll talk about the top in a little bit. On the top, it's just got a metal star that actually has rope lights on it this year. I'm going to change those out for RGB next year, but I didn't have time this year to do that. The pole in the center is 1.25" EMT galvanized, so it's the heavier pole. It seems to hold up quite well. I use wire spools as the base. Now I have a pipe down through there and holds it, but I like the way the wire spool gives me the ability to raise my tree up off the ground, because I have just a little bit of slope here and it gives me a little better scale from front to back. Let's walk around here a little bit. There's a small Renard SS8 back here that runs the strobes, and as you can see, I've got strobes coming around the back of the tree. My topper, which you really can't see, is from Christmas Light Show. It's his RGB Topper. It will hold up to 64 strands. It is quite sturdy. One thing I didn't like about the topper, and talked to Daryl about this, was that I wanted to be able to do a crank up, and he wasn't quite willing to work with me on that. So what I did was I had a local welder. I had a regular 24 crank up hook head. I took it to him and showed him what I wanted in terms of I wanted the base from the 24 hook crank up head put on this. Now what we did is we cut out the center, but it worked perfectly. It makes it really, really easy to take these strands up and down with just a regular winch. I just use hefty 15-quart boxes to put my E682s in. So you've got an E682, and under the E682 there are 2 power supplies with the wires coming in. In my case here, it works out that the 32 by 70 is 2240 pixels at about 36.36 watts per pixel. It works out to about 68 amps for the whole tree. I didn't want to take a chance on trying to stretch 230 amp power supplies to run the whole tree, so I actually have 4 power supplies running this tree. With 1 power supply on each side of each of the 2 682s. The nice thing, it gives me a nice clean run to each of them. I've got probably less than 12 feet from the controllers to the ends of the pixels, and then there's plenty of power with the pixels going up. On my house, back up here a little bit, on my house I have a combination of things. I have some traditional LED icicles hanging down, but then along the roof lines I have pixel bulbs. Those are WS2811s. Now on the outline of the house, I'm actually using the 12mm bullets. From the street, it really looks great together. I was worried about the difference in size, but the reality is with the brightness and from the street, you really don't notice that much of a difference. I use a couple different floods for my show. These are the big heavy duty ones. These were a group buy that we did together on some scrap floods that were made available. These are TIR floods. They will literally change the color of the house at night. It's kind of interesting. I'm using 5 of these. Correction, I'm using 4 of these to cover most of the house. Now on my garage, I normally run a projector and project it, and what I found out was if I use the TIRs on the garage, it wiped them out. So what I did this year was I added some 10-watt floods at the top, just shining down, and found that those worked quite well to not wash out the projections that I was doing on the house. Now my projector, this is just again a 10mm coroplast cover on top of my projector box. Projector box is just made out of 1/2-inch plywood. I've got some holes in it for circulation so that it doesn't overheat early on in the year when I'm putting it together. Top is just with a piano hinge. Inside I have an Optoma projector. This is a short throw projector. It does quite well. In there you'll see a Raspberry Pi, and then I have network connections, and I just run a cable out, and I carry this out every night and bring it back in. I am just using a quarter inch glass plate. I just went to the local glass supply and said, hey, the glass that you normally use for a desktop, I need a piece 6 inches by 6 inches, and what would you charge me for that? And the young lady came back with a 6 inch by 6 piece. I said, what do I owe you for that? She goes, nothing, we just cut it out of a piece of scrap, don't worry about it. So that was nice. And the obvious thing that I really like about the Raspberry Pi is that I have my movie files on here, and then I have those with the same name as my MP3 files, so that when my MP3 runs on the master, the slave Raspberry Pi automatically starts the video, and the video looks pretty great. I'll try and insert some of that here when I'm doing it. This is my other Mega Tree. This was my experiment the first year. This is 24 strings and 180 degrees, and it's 36 nodes high. These are actually GC bulbs, and they work quite well. Last year I had problems like everybody with them starting up. Jim at Sand Devices put out the modification where you put the resistor networks on the bottom, and they've worked perfectly this year. There's been no problems with flickering or startup or anything, so I'm quite happy with the way the GC's performed. Again, using galvanized EMT and a winch, and this one is using a standard 24 hook head on this one, again from Christmas Light Show. I really, again, like their products. This is my donation box. This donation box is really just made out of a 2x4 base on a piece of plywood, then another piece of plywood on top, and 1x3 to create a bit of a structure, and then coroplast to cover the whole thing. I've got a little lock box that I got off of eBay, and been quite successful. We're over $2,400 in donations. Normally I have a bucket of candy canes sitting in here so that when people come up and make donations, they can get candy canes, or the kids can just come up and get candy canes. So this is the 4th year for that, and it's worked out quite well, so hopefully it'll last at least another year. Another thing I have new this year I have these what I call fire sticks. What they really are is they're 12-foot arches from last year, and of course 12-foot was too long. Those actually have 200 lights per segment, so there's 8 segments on those. And when I looked at what I could do with those, I just repurposed them, and so I have 4 places on the house that I have these light sticks, and again, they're just repurposed arches that I didn't want any longer, and they add a nice effect into it. Next year I'd like to maybe add some stars to the top of them, something on that lines. On the top of the house, I have 9 snowflakes. These are just regular LEDs. They're punched through coroplast, and just a design that I got from the DIYC community, and projected them on coroplast, marked them, and then just use this old soldering iron to punch the holes through and then punch the LEDs through. This again, the 4th year for those, and they work quite well. I've got one controller up here in the corner. It's the only controller I can't get to during the show, but it runs the icicles and the snowflakes. Here we have 10 spiral trees, and in the center of that I have my nativity scene. This nativity scene I've also had for 4 years. It has held up quite well. It's made from marine plastics. Actually, a boat builder out of Florida builds these, and they are very nice, and it's an addition that people talk about regularly, so it has worked out quite well for me. One of the favorite elements that in my show are my faces, and one of the things I like about my faces is that these are basically my design. I went on the online, found gifts that I kind of liked, and then added the different mouth positions. And so I'm quite pleased with these. Again, the same thing. I hung the coroplast on a doorway and projected the pattern, and then just went through and marked the dots where I wanted them, and then used a soldering iron to do them. So there's 2 trees, Santa Claus, an elf. Come on, there's the elf, and then the other Christmas tree. So those are quite things. On each end of those are my coral columns. Now I really took this from Holiday Coro's idea of the candy canes when he first came out with those, and I decided that those would make a really nice porch post. Now here in the daylight you don't see the lights on those very well, but at night those are quite dramatic. And it's made out of 1x6 piece of cedar. Then the sides are regular coroplast, and I'm using 18 WS2801 square modules with 3 50/50 LEDs in each of them. What I did do on the front is you can take coroplast, you can actually split it so it's only 1 layer thick. So I'm only 1 layer thick. Boy, say that fast. I'm only 1 layer thick on the front so that the lights will come through. Just in general, do all my sequencing in XeniaLights. I used Vixen 2.1 last year with just a little bit of XeniaLights. This year I transferred all my Vixen 2.1 sequences to XeniaLights and did my final shows in XeniaLights, which I then transferred to the Falcon Pi player, and then of course I used the Falcon Pi player to run the show. Almost everything I do here is E1.31. I do have a lot of Renard boxes still. I run everything on the Renard off of 2 XB networks. And let me show you that just a second here. My 2 XB networks run off of an E6802. I just use 2 of the clusters to operate those 2 networks, and they're sitting out here on my front porch. That works extremely well. I have no issues, and by everything being E1.31 coming out of the Falcon, never have a freeze up, never have a hang up, and it's a very pleasant way to do things after trying to run Vixen 2.1 scheduler. So thanks for stopping by and taking a look at this video. If you have a question or anything, you can find me on doityourselfchristmas.com or DIYchristmas.org, and you'll find me under Xenia. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. Have a great year.